Could the Pac-12 make the playoff in 2023? That's the question here. Now I'm going to go through some of the top contenders, players, some ways this is possible, and some of the barriers that these teams are going to have to go through. Now let's just start right at the top. Top contenders, you got USC, Washington, Oregon, and Utah. 4 teams right there that could probably be ranked in the top 12, top 13 come preseason. I think USC, Washington, and Oregon, they should all be ranked top 10. Utah, they probably rate outside 11 or 12 if I had to make my rankings. So the positives and what this conference has going for them. I mean, you have veteran quarterbacks all across the board. Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and Cam Rising. Those are your top 4 quarterbacks in the conference. And 3 of them are going to be up for the Heisman Trophy. So that alone, that's a big start here for the Pac-12 headed into 2023. And Cam Rising is getting Brent Keithy back, arguably top 3 tight end in college football. They're going to have a good running game as well. So Utah, they might not have a top 3 quarterback, but Cam Rising is a pretty good player. I mean, he's 2-time defending Pac-12 champ. Got to give him props there. And then Pac-12 in general, this could be one of, if not the best conference in college football this season. I mean, from top to bottom, I already said USC, Washington, Oregon, Utah. You got UCLA in there. Oregon State's going to be really good. DJU's headed there. John Smith, they won 10 games. Colorado, Coach Prime. Kenny Dillingham's at Arizona State. Like, the bottom teams, even Arizona Jed Fish, the bottom teams are loading up and changing their rosters so fast in this day of college football. This conference is going to be really good across the board. A lot of good teams in this conference. Loaded skill position rooms. When you look at Washington, they have one of the best receiving rooms in college football. They're probably second to Ohio State. Oregon, they have Bo Nix, and then in his backfield, he's got Bucky Irving, who was one of the better running backs in the Pac-12 last year. USC, they went out and got Dorian Singer. He's from Arizona. He led the Pac-12 in receiving yards last year, actually. So he went from Arizona to USC. And then what I just talked about Washington, they got the receivers in Utah, Cam Rising, running game. DJU's headed to Oregon State, UCLA. They got Dante Moore, and they got some very talented players in the portal. Even Cal. I mean, I don't think Cal's going to be a real threat in this, but they got Byron Cardwell, who's a starter for Oregon at running back. There's a lot of players, and then you got Coach Prime. He went out and got Shadur Sanders, his son, to follow him. Travis Hunter's coming in. There's a lot of good players in this conference, and that's what you need. To be a good conference, you need players at the skill positions that can go out and win games for your team. And then on the other side of the ball, you have up-and-coming defenses. A lot of these teams are going to be a lot better on defense than they were in 2022. Specifically, I'd go right at USC, Washington, and Oregon right at the top. I mean, Alex Grinch is coming back for USC, so I don't know how much better they can get. And they lost their best pass rusher in Tuli Pelotu. But when I look at Oregon and Washington, they have all the players. They have all the talent, especially Oregon, just because they have Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy. Went out and got Jordan Birch from South Carolina. I know they lost Justin Flo in the portal, but he wasn't really an impact player last year for them. They're losing Noah Sewell and Christian Gonzalez, who's a projected top 15 pick in the draft. But transfer portal, recruiting, it's all there for Oregon. I expect Dan Lanning to have that defense much better. And then Washington, like I said, there was a point in time when they were one of the teams that were up for DBU in college football, defensive back university. They've had so many draft picks go to the NFL. And looking at their roster, they have a lot of guys that could have breakout seasons and get themselves in draft position. And the next thing is innovative coaching staffs all across the board here. I already hit on some of them. But these coaches in the Pac-12, they understand. They know how to build a roster. They know how to get talent, just like teams down south. When you look at Dan Lanning and Coach Prime, even Chip Kelly right now and Kenny Dillingham, they're hitting the portal really hard. Lincoln Riley's doing it at the skill positions better than anyone else as well. But they're going to other programs and stealing starters off their teams. They come and flip their roster and flush the bad players out of there. Now that may sound harsh, but let's just say how it is. That's what college football is now. If you're not good enough, you're going to transfer out, and that program's going to go and get someone that's good enough from a program that, heck, they might have won 9, 10 games, and that kid might have started on that team and had a pretty good season, but he wants to go somewhere else. That's exactly what's happening in the Pac-12 right now. In Utah, I want to hit on Utah specifically here. Kyle Whittingham has never had the talent that he's about to have for these next 2 to 3 seasons. You think about how successful Utah's been under him. They've had some of the best teams out west over the last decade. 2-time Pac-12 defending champs. Now, recruiting wise, they had probably the best recruiting class they've ever had in 2023. Transfer portal, players want to go play for them. And Kyle Whittingham with talent. Pac-12 coaches aren't going to say they're scared. Obviously, no one's going to say they're scared. But I just think there's going to be a sense of, oh boy, like, what could this look like? And that's how I'm feeling. I want to see what Utah looks like with all this talent. One of the best coaching staffs in college football. It'll be very interesting to see because if they go back to the Pac-12 championship and win it for a third straight time, there's going to be a lot of question marks around USC, Washington, and Oregon. Like, where are you guys at? You have all this talent. You're getting all these players. Transfer portal recruiting rankings, top 15, top 20 every single season. But you still can't beat Kyle Whittingham. And if they can't beat him this year, what makes you think they're going to beat him 2, 3 years from now? Because he's getting all this talent. That's another thing the Pac-12 has going for him. Talent acquisition at a very high level. But there's 3 barriers and 3 things that are going to be in the way for the Pac-12 to make the playoff. The main thing, what happens every single year, every single time there's a contender outside of 2 times they made the playoff. But the Pac-12, they could just beat each other up and just totally eliminate themselves from the playoff. I mean, this would be the most Pac-12 thing ever to have 4 teams in the top 10 to start the preseason. They're all sitting at 9-1, 8-2, 10-1. At the end of the season, they all lose, all beat each other up. Let's say USC's undefeated. They go play Oregon. Oregon beats them. USC comes back. They beat Utah. But then Oregon loses to Washington and Utah. Like, that's just how it goes every single season. The teams that beat the top teams lose to the bottom teams. It just happens every single season. And I would not be surprised if it happens in 2023. Now, the SEC and Big Ten are going to be a huge part in the Pac-12 being able to make the playoff. And I say that because Georgia and Alabama, heck, you can even throw LSU in there. But there's a good shot. There's 2 SEC teams in the playoff. More, like, the chances are higher of that happening than the Pac-12 getting 1 team. Same with the Big Ten. Michigan and Ohio State, if they're both undefeated last week of the season when they play each other, and that's a good game, they're both probably going to get in. Now, with this, though, all the Pac-12 has to do is have a 1-loss conference champ because of how good the conference is going to be. It's just, is that possible? Like what I was just talking about. They could all lose to each other, all beat each other up. But the SEC and Big Ten, they won't get 2 teams in if the Pac-12 just has a 1-loss conference champ, especially if it's one of those top 4 teams I named who's going to start the season very high in the rankings. So it's definitely something to consider, given the fact that Georgia's gone back-to-back. LSU's on the rise. Alabama's changing their coaching staff. Got a lot of talent, obviously. And then Michigan and Ohio State, they're probably going to run the Big Ten. I know Penn State's in there. Even, heck, Penn State, they beat Ohio State and lose to Michigan. And that's their only loss. And then it's Michigan and like Iowa or Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. Heck, Michigan might be the 1 or 2 seed at that point, and then Penn State might sneak in there at number 4 over the Pac-12. Who knows? But definitely something to watch out for. And then the Pac-12, they must go about their standard and expectations to get the committee on their side. What I mean by that, go about their own standard. What that standard is, go win. Go win 11 games. Go make the Pac-12 championship. Go win it. A lot of out-of-conference opportunities here. And that's what I mean by go about your own schedule. Just go handle business. Go above and beyond your expectations. Because there's opportunities against high major teams with a lot of talent from down south, out east, where a lot of fans are watching. If you go win those games, Pac-12 gonna gain some recognition from the committee, fans, everybody. Remember in 2021, Oregon went and beat Ohio State. Everyone's like, "Oh my, look at this! The Pac-12's finally making a move." But then last season, Utah went to Florida, they lost. Oregon went to Georgia and lost to the SEC teams. Everyone forgot about that. So they're gonna have to go win some games. Florida's coming to Utah this year. Utah wins that, boom, Utah's right back on the map. Everyone's watching them. Just games like that. Washington, they're going to Michigan State. They're going in the heart of Big Ten territory. They go in there and blow the doors off of them, which could very easily happen. Heck, everyone's got their eye on Washington. Their chances at the playoff just went up tremendously. So I think the Pac-12 they do have a shot. Just to end the segment, I think Pac-12 does have a shot. Obviously, things are gonna have to go their way, and one of those four teams that I mentioned at the top, they're gonna have to go 11-1 or 12-0 and win the Pac-12 and win their out of conference games. Because let's be honest, if USC is 11-1 and that loss is to Utah by like 3, they win the Pac-12, they're easily in. Same with Oregon. If Oregon and Washington, if they are 11-1 and their loss is to the other one, and they win the Pac-12, they're easily in. And then same with Utah. If they beat Florida, heck, if they lose to Florida and win out, go undefeated in the Pac-12, one loss, conference champ, they'll be in as well. So I think this is definitely a possibility as long as they don't beat each other up.